conceptual nugget of the project is really embodied in the title. So the title is Flower, F-L-O, we, you, are, flower. So it's two forms of flour. It's the flour that has historically been milled in this city, so flour, baking flour, and flour that blooms.
Nice.
In World War I, planes were young, very young, and they needed to figure out how to drop these test bombs with some kind of accuracy. So they took flower pots and they filled them with house flour and they strapped them to, biplanes, and they dropped them to see a white spot on the landscape. And these dummy test bombs led to this kind of awesome destruction. It is the birth of modern warfare in a way, and some of the most terrible events of the 20th century have happened through dropping things from the air. But they started out with these weird domestic materials. It was just a flower pot filled with flour.
The ridge lines right here are actually meant for the fins. Were actually attached there, so actually this is the orientation. If it's dropping, so the charge would be on this end, and then the fins would be attached by a strap here, just probably wooden fins, and then it would be dropped.
And on the tip there was a single shotgun shell, the cheapest single shotgun charge. So they were really looking to use the most minimal amount of material. As a start, we opened a factory in a space in downtown Chicago, which was a former retail space, and we put the whole process of production on view.
We took that experience and then approached the soap factory to kind of do it at a larger scale. And so now we have a 5,000 square foot factory space. And the soap factory is a historical soap factory, so it's tied to that labor, tied to the physical space of that labor. And now we can bring this project to a larger fruition.
We'd found a military contract for the Northwestern Terracotta Company from 1916 to produce 25,000 bombs. And so we took on the role of that contract and said, here we are, two non-military individuals working in, sort of self-supporting production. What can we do? So at the soap factory, we're going to be able to engage in the more traditional process of how they were actually made, using much closer to the kind of clay body and the kind of working processes that an architectural terracotta factory would have used. Going to be a bubble room, a plastic bubble room over in that corner, where we'll have molds drying in a temperature-controlled space. So we're making a bubble. Let's run our hand along the whole seam all the way down each time. where we're drying the molds. So for the run of the exhibition, there's going to be a 24-hour drying cycle where 25 molds will be in the drying room and 25 molds will be on the floor, ready to use.
It sounded like it was gonna flow.
Funky noises.
Yeah.
Let's
see how much that weighs. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Probably once a day we'll do a clay mixing, but we're doing sort of a good run of it to have enough to start. We'll probably mix about 5,000 pounds before the exhibition starts, just so we can get a little bit ahead of the game.
We wanted to kind of bring the production quality, you know, the factory model, the factory production, and bring that into the actual work. Like it's about the production of this. It's about the labor that's involved. It's about the inputs. It's about the material. We're not historians, you know, we're not archivists. We're interested in history. We're interested in the archive of the object, but we also want to have some new creative outcomes for these objects.
You put clay into one half of the mold, then you put clay into another half of a mold, and then like a clam shell, you put them together and there's a hollow center. And then after an unknown amount of hours, depending on the weather, the molds are opened and taken one by one to the back of the room where we have a table right in front of these windows that allow in very beautiful light in the evening. Architectural terracotta firms were commissioned to make these Mark V dummy test bombs during World War I, and they were then shipped to New Mexico and Utah and sites that are traditionally used for testing bombs still, and they were filled with house flour, and they were dropped from early biplanes, and you'd see a white spot on the landscape, and pilots could just drop hundreds of these to test. They were made in huge quantities.
Our kind of collective interest is dealing with ceramic histories, and particularly terracotta histories. You know, this material that man has been, or humankind has been manipulating and changing its state, changing its, you know, basically altering, terraforming their environment. So like taking mud and turning it into something that they can be used. And then also the parallel history to this specific project is a military history, using clay again as a resource to generate a bomb for testing, basically aerial bombing. And so we like the connection to the historical use of terracotta, this kind of primal material, this military American, very kind of obscure history that relatively few people even know about, and then kind of bringing that whole process into this space to reproduce. reproduce those objects, but then finding these other ends.
These are the forms. They're Mark V terracotta dummy test bombs. And these are the slip cast forms. And as you can see, we've inserted a sort of sieve into it. And there's an open end. So you'll be able to kind of put it in a bucket of sand and put a funnel in here and pour one of 3 white blooming seed mixes in. And then you can sling it over your shoulder and head out to wherever you want to go. And then when you find a place that you'd like to seed, you can just shake the seed out. The white blooming seeds, to me, I think that you can't escape the peace connotation, but I think for me the more interesting thing has to do with the way in which a seed functions, and that it has the potential to reproduce. And so any seed we plant may rebloom or reemerge somewhere else. It's unknown and it's slower. But this idea of a perhaps sort of non-linear, slower unfolding into something a little bit more unknown. The military is really testing towards something very specific, and we wanted to work towards something a little bit more open-ended and less specific. This project opened up the what are these and how are they produced, but also what can they become. And we offered one possibility of what they could become, which was this linguistic interpretation of the white spot, where historically houseflower had been dropped to leave a mark on a landscape.
Okay, ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming, the drums drumming everywhere, so prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware, we'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there.
The bike captains were fantastic, and this was my first opportunity to be a participant in my project, where the bike captains taking this strong lead and us learning together how to do these seating circles just really felt like tremendous gifts to the project. All right, on your start. Ready. Historically, houseflower had been dropped to leave a mark on a landscape, and we replaced that mark on a landscape with white blooming seeds so that people could we made a wearable object that people could fill with a white blooming seed of their choice, and they could make this very slow white bloom that would sort of poof out in an unknown, inaccurate way.
Johnny, get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. Johnny, show the Hun you're a son of a gun.
some of the things that have happened here that have been really exciting is, we have a Victrola DJ here for the closing based on an idea of one of the interns saying we need World War I music.
Closing night is mostly going to be us actually packing and shipping off the factory. So we're going to be packing up the molds. We'll be filling up the empties are now these are empty shells right now. We're going to be drilling them out and filling them.
This whole process has been on display, and so the process of breaking down will also be on display.
Pack all your troubles in your own kit bag and smile, smile, smile. Why you were so people tonight, you'll thank my voice and my
We're sort of playing with this history and finding a new way of activating it. And really it's a way to both tell the story of the past and continue the story into the future. The soap factory is really a unique environment in which to engage in this kind of playfulness because they're right there with excitement and resources and man and woman power to make it happen.